They say every house keeps secrets. But no one ever tells you what happens when a house decides it's time to speak. It began as an ordinary afternoon. The kind where dust floats lazily through sunbeams and silence feels harmless. The house had been in the family for generations, old, sturdy, familiar. Or so they believed. When the power went out, they assumed a fuse box in the basement was to blame. One simple trip downstairs. One small decision. That was all it took to change everything. The basement door protested as it opened, groaning like it had been waiting years for this moment. The air below was colder, heavier. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the darkness was listening. Their flashlight flickered, briefly revealing walls lined with shelves, forgotten boxes, and cobwebs that looked untouched by time. Then they saw it. Behind a rusted cabinet, hidden in the shadows, was a door no one remembered. No handle. No keyhole. Just wood. Scratched, scarred, and sealed shut. A door that did not belong. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. It whispers instead of shouts. It convinces you that some truths are harmless. They pried the door open, expecting emptiness. What they found instead was a room that felt wrong. The walls were marked with symbols no one could read. Old photographs lay scattered across the floor, faces staring back with hollow eyes. And in the center of the room was a box. Inside the box were letters. Letters written decades ago. Letters describing disappearances that were never reported. Letters signed with a family name they recognized, their own. That was the moment everything shifted. The house was no longer just a house. It was a witness. A keeper of memories deliberately buried beneath wooden floors and polite conversations. The basement wasn't a storage space. It was a grave for the truth. They realized then that silence can be inherited, just like eye color or old furniture. That secrets don't die when they're hidden. They wait. They grow. And eventually, they demand to be found. As the lights flickered back on upstairs, nothing looked the same. Every hallway felt longer. Every wall felt closer. The house hadn't changed, but they had. Because once you uncover a truth like that, you can't put it back in the dark. What they found in the basement didn't just explain the past. It rewrote it. It forced them to confront a question far more terrifying than what was hidden below. What other secrets are we living on top of, pretending not to hear them knocking? What appears ordinary often earns our trust too easily. We walk through familiar spaces believing that repetition equals safety, that time has proven something harmless simply because nothing has disturbed us yet. Homes, streets, routines, they lull us into comfort by their sameness. But beneath that comfort, there can exist layers we never question, places we never look, and histories we never ask about. The most unsettling discoveries are rarely found in distant or dramatic places. They are hidden in the environments we think we understand best. Familiarity has a strange power. It blinds us. When something is always present, we stop truly seeing it. A creaking floorboard becomes background noise. A locked door becomes an accepted detail. A basement becomes nothing more than a storage space for broken furniture and forgotten boxes. Over time, our minds edit out the possibility that something meaningful or dangerous could exist there. We assume that if something mattered, we would already know about it. That assumption is what allows secrets to survive. Hidden truths do not announce themselves. They disguise themselves as dust, shadows, and silence. They settle into the cracks of ordinary life, protected by our refusal to question what feels normal. The most effective hiding place is not darkness, it is routine. When a space becomes predictable, it becomes invisible. And in that invisibility, things can remain untouched for years, even generations. There is also comfort in believing that the past is settled. We like to think that what came before us has been resolved, explained, or neatly stored away. It reassures us to believe that history is something behind us, not beneath us. But buried stories do not disappear simply because they are covered. They become part of the foundation, shaping what stands above them. Even when ignored, they influence the atmosphere of a place, the unspoken tension in a room, the sense that something is slightly out of place without any clear reason why. Ordinary environments are powerful because they lower our defenses. We expect danger to look threatening, to announce itself with warning signs. We do not expect it to be hidden behind familiar walls or under floors we have walked across for years. This is why discovery feels so shocking, not because the secret exists, but because of where it exists. The closer a hidden truth is to our sense of safety, the more it unsettles us when revealed. When something concealed finally comes into view, it forces us to reevaluate everything around it. The familiar becomes suspicious. The ordinary becomes layered with meaning. A simple space transforms into evidence that what we accept at face value is not always complete. It reminds us that surfaces can lie, and that the most ordinary places may be quietly carrying stories far darker and deeper than we ever imagined. Curiosity often disguises itself as something harmless. It feels like a small nudge, a quiet question, a momentary thought that asks, "What if?" It doesn't arrive with danger in mind, nor does it warn us of consequences. Instead, it presents itself as a natural response to uncertainty, convincing us that seeking answers is always safe. In moments like these, curiosity doesn't feel like a decision at all. It feels inevitable. The turning point rarely comes with drama. It begins with something minor, a flickering light, a strange sound, an object that seems out of place. These details invite attention, and attention invites investigation. At first, there is confidence that whatever is found will be easily explained. The mind prepares for a simple resolution, not a revelation. This false sense of control is what makes the step forward feel justified. Once curiosity takes hold, hesitation weakens. The question shifts from "should I look?" to "why wouldn't I?" Silence becomes uncomfortable, and the unknown starts to feel heavier than the risk of discovery. Curiosity reframes fear as ignorance, persuading us that knowledge will bring relief. In reality, it is not always relief that knowledge delivers. The moment of crossing the line is often quiet. A hand reaches out. A door opens. A box is lifted. Nothing explodes. Nothing stops us. And because there is no immediate resistance, the action feels permitted, almost encouraged. This is where the true turning point occurs. Not when something terrifying is revealed, but when the choice to uncover it is made. From that moment on, retreat is no longer possible. Curiosity transforms the observer into a participant. Before, there was distance. After, there is involvement. The act of looking connects us to what is found, binding us to its consequences. Even if the discovery is incomplete, the awareness alone changes the relationship between us and the world around us. What was once external becomes personal. There is a quiet cruelty in curiosity's honesty. It does not promise comfort. It promises truth. And truth, once revealed, demands acknowledgement. It forces the mind to reorganize its understanding, replacing assumptions with realities that cannot be unseen. The simple act of wanting to know becomes the catalyst for disruption. In this way, curiosity is not reckless. It is powerful. It is the spark that turns possibility into certainty and questions into consequences. It pushes us forward not with force, but with invitation. And once accepted, that invitation reshapes everything that follows, altering not just what we know, but how we see, how we feel, and how we exist in the space between ignorance and awareness. The idea that the past can be buried is one of the most comforting lies we tell ourselves. We imagine that time has the power to erase, that silence can dissolve events, that what is hidden long enough will eventually lose its weight. But the past does not obey that logic. It does not fade simply because it is ignored. Instead, it settles into place, absorbing time, gathering strength, waiting for the moment when it can no longer be contained. What is buried is rarely gone. It exists in fragments, unfinished stories, unanswered questions, uneasy feelings that surface without explanation. Even when names are forgotten and details are blurred, the influence remains. The past has a way of leaking through the smallest cracks, shaping behavior, decisions, and relationships without ever revealing its source. People sense it in discomfort they cannot explain, in patterns that repeat without reason, in fears that seem inherited rather than learned. Silence plays a crucial role in keeping the past alive. When truths are suppressed, they are not resolved, they are preserved. Each act of avoidance becomes another layer of soil pressed down over something unresolved. Over time, that pressure builds. What was once a single moment becomes a legacy, passed down through generations, who may not know what happened, only that something feels unfinished. The weight of unspoken history does not disappear, it transfers. There is also intention in burial. Things are hidden because they are feared, because they threaten stability, reputation, or identity. But burying the truth does not neutralize it. It traps it. And trapped truths have a way of distorting the space around them. They influence what is said, and what is avoided, what is remembered and what is rewritten. The past begins to shape the present from the shadows, guiding it without consent. Time does not weaken buried truths, it sharpens them. As years pass, imagination fills the gaps left by silence, often creating something more powerful than reality itself. What might have been confronted and understood becomes mythologized, exaggerated, or internalized as something unspeakable. The longer the delay, the greater the impact when the truth finally surfaces. When the past resurfaces, it rarely does so gently. It arrives with force, not because it has grown more dangerous, but because it has been denied resolution for too long. The shock comes not from what happened, but from how long it was hidden. The realization that people lived alongside the truth without acknowledging it creates a fracture in trust. Trust in others, in memory, and in the stories we tell ourselves to feel secure. Buried histories demand recognition. They resist being forgotten because they were never understood in the first place. They persist in subtle ways, influencing the present until they are finally acknowledged. The past does not ask for permission to return. It does not wait for the right moment. It emerges when the silence protecting it can no longer hold, forcing itself into the open, carrying everything that was denied, ignored, and left unresolved. Truth has a quiet violence to it. It doesn't rush in loudly or announce its arrival, yet the moment it is recognized, something inside us shifts. What we believe about ourselves is often built on stories we've accepted without question, stories shaped by memory, tradition, and selective understanding. When a hidden truth emerges, it doesn't simply add new information, it dismantles those stories, piece by piece. Identity feels solid only because it rests on assumed foundations. We define ourselves through family, place, and history, trusting that these elements are stable and complete. But when the truth reveals gaps or contradictions in that foundation, certainty begins to fracture. The person we thought we were no longer aligns with the reality we now see. This dissonance is deeply unsettling because it challenges not just what we know, but who we believe ourselves to be. Once exposed, truth demands integration. It cannot exist separately from identity. It forces a reckoning, asking us to reconcile past beliefs with present understanding. This process is rarely comfortable. It requires acknowledging complicity, ignorance, or inherited narratives that no longer hold. In confronting truth, we are confronted with ourselves. Our assumptions, our loyalties, and our willingness to accept complexity over comfort. Transformation follows awareness. Even resistance becomes part of the change. The mind begins to reinterpret memories, reframe experiences, and question motivations that once felt clear. Familiar moments take on new meaning, and the past is no longer a fixed record, but a living context reshaped by revelation. Identity, once stable, becomes fluid, adapting to accommodate what was hidden. There is a profound loneliness in this transformation. Others may still live within the old story, untouched by the truth that has altered our perception. This separation creates distance, a sense of standing between two versions of reality, one that once felt safe and one that now feels unavoidable. Yet, this discomfort is also where growth begins. Truth strips away simplicity. It replaces certainty with depth, innocence with awareness. In doing so, it forces identity to mature. What emerges is not necessarily stronger, but more honest. The transformation is irreversible because once truth is seen, it becomes part of us, reshaping how we understand our place in the world and the narratives we choose to carry forward. There is a moment when knowledge becomes irreversible. It is the point where perception shifts so completely that returning to the previous state of understanding is impossible. Before that moment, the world feels simpler, structured by assumptions that offer comfort and clarity. After it, everything carries an added layer of meaning, whether we want it to or not. What was once familiar now feels altered, not because it changed, but because we did. Revelation removes the option of ignorance. Once a truth is uncovered, it occupies the mind persistently, reshaping how situations are interpreted and how decisions are made. Even attempts to ignore it require effort, because awareness creates responsibility. Knowing something fundamentally changes the relationship between the individual and their surroundings, turning passive experience into conscious engagement. The loss of innocence that follows discovery is subtle but permanent. It does not announce itself through dramatic shifts, but through small moments of recognition. A detail once overlooked now stands out. A memory once dismissed now demands reconsideration. The mind begins to trace connections that were invisible before, constructing a more complex, and often more unsettling, picture of reality. This transformation carries weight. With new understanding comes the burden of choice. Action or inaction both become deliberate, no longer excused by lack of knowledge. This responsibility can feel heavy, as it forces confrontation with consequences that were previously abstract. There is no comfort in pretending not to know, because the truth remains present, shaping every interpretation. The impossibility of returning to ignorance creates a kind of internal division. One part of the self remembers how things felt before, while another adapts to the new awareness. This tension lingers, creating a constant comparison between what was believed and what is now understood. The mind does not settle easily into this new reality, but it adjusts because it must. Change becomes unavoidable not through action, but through perception. The world, once trusted without question, is now examined with care. Every experience is filtered through the knowledge gained, altering emotional responses and expectations. The revelation becomes a permanent lens through which reality is viewed, ensuring that nothing is ever encountered in quite the same way again. In the end, the story is not just about a basement, a hidden room, or what was discovered there. It is about the fragile line between comfort and truth. It is about how easily we trust what feels familiar, how curiosity quietly leads us past the point of return, and how the past refuses to remain silent no matter how deeply it is buried. Each revelation reshapes identity, forcing us to see ourselves and our surroundings with new eyes. And once that shift happens, there is no returning to who we were before. What they found changed everything because it had to. Truth does not exist to be convenient, it exists to be known. And when it finally surfaces, it asks something of us: courage. courage to face what was hidden, to accept what cannot be undone, and to live with awareness rather than illusion. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. But in that irreversible moment, we gain something rare and unsettling, a deeper understanding of reality and of ourselves, whether we are ready for it or not.